Glad you guys are back. I know we've been talking a lot about different things in science, starting with really all the living things and switching from animals to plants to animals to plants. And really the focus of this is learning about life science or all living things and really comparing and contrasting them. And I know we keep going back and forth, but today we're really going to talk about animals again. And we talked a lot about 2 days ago about how scientists organize different living organisms into 6 different kingdoms, and then they take animals and they organize them into different families, like the cat family, the dog family, so on and so forth. We talked about plants, so scientists organize plants, and especially if you remember those V words. The vascular plants, which are generally the taller ones because they have tubes to transport all the nutrients, the food, water, and air. And non-vascular plants, the plants that don't have tubes. Today we're going to talk also about animals and another way that scientists classify them. There is another V word in here, but we'll get to that soon here. I don't know if you remember this guy, but we talked about this with the grocery stores, right? They have food and drinks and I mean anything you could ever think of. You go to Bash's', you go to Fry's, there's wall to wall, 25 different aisles or more. They have to organize. They have to have a cereal aisle, a bread aisle, a soda pop aisle. Otherwise we'd be there forever. We still are, but it helps when it's organized so you know what to look for. Well, scientists do the same thing. And here's that V word I was talking about. They classify a lot of animals, should say organize a lot of animals into vertebrates and invertebrates. Now what exactly does that mean? It really has one main focus, and it's really the backbone. If you feel down the middle of your back, that's your backbone. You might call it the spine, and a lot of animals have them. They're called vertebrates. A lot of animals don't. Those are called invertebrates. Simply put, an animal that has a backbone is a vertebrate. An animal that does not have a backbone is an invertebrate. I guess I already spoiled this one for you, right? We are vertebrates. We're mammals, if you want to go back to how scientists classify humans. But yeah, we're vertebrates. We have backbones. Here's a couple little pictures. Now, to be honest with you, in my opinion, vertebrates are kind of the most famous ones. These are the ones that your mommy or your auntie says, hey, what does a cow say, right? What does a dog say? What does a duck say? They're common. Most of our favorite animals are vertebrates. Not really so much with the invertebrate. I bet if we ask every single person in the school what their favorite animal is, I don't think a single one of them would pick any kind of invertebrate. The beetles, the crabs, the snails, the centipedes, the spiders. A lot of times they're the creepy crawler things, but really we're not going to focus on that. What we want to focus on is vertebrates. They have backbones, every one of them. Even though they're very different from a cow to a duck to a fish, they all have backbones. All invertebrates don't have backbones. That's how scientists classify a lot of animals. So today what we're going to do is kind of go through all the different types of vertebrates. The first one is fish, and again, why is a fish a fish? I mean, there's all kinds of them. There's carp, there's catfish, there's trout, there's all kinds of different things, but they're all fish. Here's what makes a fish a fish. If you're a scientist and have an animal that never has been discovered, you got to ask yourself a few things. Right? If it's covered with scales, if it lives in the water, if it breathes with gills, if it's cold-blooded, which means its body temperature changes with the temperature around it, and lays eggs, then it very well could be a fish. And I want to focus on a couple things. I purposely use these words because the word usually, if I could get this there we go, usually covered with scales, because not all fish do, but most of them do. If you ever have a catfish and your uncle ever catches a catfish with you, it's kind of weird skin that they have. You actually peel it right off, but not exactly scales. So, but most fish do. And again here, most lay eggs. 99.9% of fish lay eggs. But that's what makes a fish a fish. If it has feathers, it's not a fish. Right? If it's warm-blooded like you and me, it's not a fish. This is how how scientists classify them, and all fish have backbones. All fish are vertebrates. Another type of vertebrate is, I forgot I had more pictures of fish. All the different fish in the sea. I mean, all kinds of different ones there. Oh yeah, look at this. And oh yeah, we got some famous fish. Okay, let's move on. Amphibians. Here's the deal. Here's what makes an amphibian an amphibian. If you're a scientist and want to classify certain types of animals, all amphibians are covered with smooth skin. They live both on land and in water. They breathe with gills or lungs or both. They're cold-blooded, and amphibians hatch from eggs. Some of the most famous amphibians here is like this tree frog. Now, if you want to get to the root, or should say, what an amphibian, what the word actually means, it means double life. So if you see this, say, wait a second, breathe with gills or lungs or both, live on both land and in water. Take again the most famous amphibian here, the frog, and it's crazy how God made them, but the life cycle of a frog is that the mommy frog lays eggs in the water. The eggs hatch and they come out as tadpoles, if you ever see them. Right? It almost looks more like a fish than a frog because it doesn't have legs and it's living in the water, which means it starts breathing with gills. And then you might see the little tail get shorter and shorter and it grows hind legs, and eventually it hops out and it lives on land and it breathes with lungs. Crazy, crazy, crazy life cycle and how God made amphibians, but that's what amphibian means, double life. Doesn't mean that they, it just means that they start in the water breathing with gills and then live on land breathing with lungs. Here's some of the most famous amphibians. Please don't confuse this with the worm or snake. It's not. It's a type of amphibian. It follows all the characteristics of smooth skin, hatch from eggs, so on and so forth. But I think these are probably the most common ones there, the good old frogs and such. But what makes this a vertebrate is every single one of these amphibians, as crazy as they look, every single one of them has a backbone. Going to reptiles here. Here's what kind of makes reptiles reptiles. Reptiles are cold-blooded. They lay eggs. They take care of themselves after hatching, which means just like, if you have horses outside of your house and mommy takes care of the baby horse for a while, right? Same with humans. We take care of the babies for a while. The mommy kitty takes care of the little kittens for a while. Not reptiles. They lay the eggs. Mommy's out of there. Not to be mean, it's just how they are. And even after the second after they hatch from the eggs, reptiles are on their own. They got to fend for themselves, get their own food, and defend themselves. But some of the most famous ones are lizards, snakes, turtles, and alligators and crocodiles. But the tough, dry skin is what makes it too. If you ever touch any of these animals, they don't have smooth, wet skin. That's an amphibian. Reptiles have the dry, scaly skin. Good in our desert ecosystem here, huh? Going with birds, again, animals with backbones, all vertebrates. Now, what makes a bird a bird? They're covered with feathers. Most live on land, but they can spend time on water. You think of eagles and herons and ducks, right? Live on the land, but they spend time in water, or hunt in the water. Every single bird breathes with lungs. Every single bird is warm-blooded, which means their body temperature stays the same. And all birds lay eggs. Every single bird that's ever existed hatched from an egg. If it doesn't, it's not a bird. All kinds of famous birds. Some you know, some you don't. Some are big, some are tiny, so on and so forth. But every single one of them has stuff in common. They're warm-blooded. They have feathers. They lay eggs. That's what makes birds birds. That's why scientists classify them as birds, even though there's a lot of different types of birds. Sorry about that. Going back to reptiles. I didn't want you to get confused with amphibians and reptiles because a lot of people do. They think that snakes are like frogs and lizards are like different types of amphibians and such are not. You got to make sure you keep them separated. But again, all these have dry, scaly skin, even though they spend time in the water. These are the reptiles here. Going to mammals. Now this one might be the most common to us because we tend to spend the most time with mammals. Horses, cows, all these types of animals here. As big as an elephant, as tiny as, whatever that thing is, a koala bear, and things like that. But all mammals have hair or fur. It's like you have hair. Most live on land, but a few live in water, right? It's like we live on land. Breathe with lungs, just like we breathe with lungs. Warm-blooded, which means their body temperature stays the same. So you know if you have a fever, if your body temperature is too high or too low, because your body's temperature should always stay the same. That's what warm-blooded means. And most mammals have live births. A mommy horse is going to give birth to a live horse. Same with humans that give live births, which means they don't hatch from eggs. They're born alive, right? These are all mammals, and that guy's a mammal too. Have you ever seen that crazy guy? Humans are classified as mammals. Again, go back to the different characteristics. Have hair, live on land, breathe with lungs, warm-blooded, live births. So that's us. That's us. Not to say that we're animals, because God made us the crown of creation and gave us souls, but, scientifically speaking, humans are indeed classified as mammals. Let's get to your assignment here. Here's what I'm asking you to do. You go all the way back to the different pages that we're looking through in your science book. I highly encourage you to look through those, but simply put, I want you to go through each type of vertebrae and how the scientists classify them as birds and reptiles and amphibians and mammals, and simply write down one thing you learned. Don't just write down horse. That's not something you learned. Really, truly, look through the book, rewatch this video if you need to, and tell me something that you didn't know before you started this video 12 minutes ago. Tell me something you actually learned. This is exactly what your assignment looks like. It's day 9. It's in your paper packet. It's on your flash drive. But really, truly, challenge yourself and don't say fish live in water. Yes, you probably knew that. Tell me something that you learned, please. Write it down. Be ready to hand it in on Monday. And have a great rest of the day.